This is the Lydia and Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl. Well, welcome to the dog days. The latest report is Sunday, the 21st of July, was the hottest day ever on record. And there is a 92% chance that 2024 is even going to be more gruesome. Welcome to hell. Hello, Tim.
Hi. Well, I'm in hell. I also have COVID. So having COVID when it's muggy and nasty out, it really takes it to another level.
Oh, the weather is so odd. The air is quality is so poor everywhere. Well,
It sucks.
I'm
Well,
saying
I mean, speaking of like just it being hot, I mean, I don't know if you saw this. The second time this year, and I think it was once last year, wild pink flamingo in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, the first time ever recorded. Yeah, so the animals
cooler terrain.
Well, it just shows. I mean, the animals are they're migrating too. Yeah, I mean, pink flamingos in Massachusetts. Come on.
Outrageous. Well, we heard last year of cocaine bear, but have you heard of the cocaine shark?
Yes. I think people are writing me all day yesterday about that one because they know I love sharks, and well, enough said.
well, they're supposedly munching on the cocaine debris off the Brazilian coast, making them, of course, more aggressive and probably a little bit sexier.
Well, it was actually specifically this woman, Rachel Davis, oceanographer, and she took 13 wild sharp-nosed sharks, dissected them, and I mean, it was high exposure. And it was all through their muscles and liver. So, of course, there's one theory is, do they eat packages that narco people dumped off? Right. They think it's more likely because animals, sharks are kind of like garbage men. They kind of, a lot of animals this way gather around where the sewage treatment dumps its stuff, and they think it's just maybe high levels of the urine and feces in Rio de Janeiro, which is believable.
Absolutely. Well, they that's how they're testing for the uprise in COVID as well, is they test the water treatment, the waste treatment.
I mean, I know 7 or 8 people who got COVID in the last couple of weeks, including myself now. Yeah, so it's kind of, it's coming back strong. This one's kind of a rough one. So it's the 4th time I've had it since the beginning of all this shit. And so 2 and 3 were like nothing. First one was not great, and this one's pretty rough. So
have you tried any of the medication they have for it?
Well, I probably missed the window. Yeah, those antivirals got immediately. I mean, I'm not to the point where I need to be hospitalized. I'm not gasping for air. I can walk.
Go to bed.
It's like a weird flu kind of thing. It's its own thing, but it's like that. Yeah.
Well, as if COVID wasn't bad enough. I don't know. This is gonna be a quiz for you. So, what do you think are the top 10 foods with the most microplastics right now?
Any hints? I mean, meats or produce or
all of it. So just give a guess.
Milk?
No. Come on.
COVID brain right now, a little slow. All right. Beef.
Nope.
I mean, soft drinks. I mean,
water. Hello, we know bottled water. I mean, I don't know why people drink that anyway, but they've been doing it. But that's what they do.
Spinach.
Nope.
God, I'm terrible. Chicken. I'm really missing it today.
No, I'm just going to give you the list then.
Please.
Himalayan salt.
Okay, it makes sense because interesting. Well, I mean, I would have never guessed that.
White rice, actually, who thinks? But there it is in the rice patties. But rinsing rice, which you should do anyway, gets rid of about 40% of the microplastics. Shrimp.
Shrimp. Yeah, crustaceans really, they're on they're bottom feeders. They kind of take in anything. So I mean, that makes sense.
How about plant-based nuggets? Oh yeah.
Why those?
Whatever's in them. But these I think are some weird ones. Is apples, carrots, and tea. Apples. One of the fruits with the most apple a day. Well, an apple a day might kill you.
Well, yeah, I know they're all waxed. That's why they give that little shiny thing.
Well, they pull it up from the roots. of the tree, and then it goes into the leaves and it goes into the plant.
So it was actually
Carrots underground, at tea, which is, and sugar, of course. This is just, we're doomed.
We're doomed. I mean, so it's like then if you don't have the plastics, that they absorb it through the ground. Then you have pesticides. They're very like broccoli and strawberries. They're very porous. They suck in the pesticides. And yay!
With that cherry
maybe,
note,
yeah, on that
cherry summer day,
Kelly Kruger of North Carolina, she was hanging out on her porch on July 13th. Just minding her own business, no one around, just maybe having a lemonade or something. I don't know. I'm trying to paint a picture of North Carolina, summer porch hangs. Well, that was the last thing she remembered. She was found a week later on the 20th, only with shorts on, nothing else, and only with shorts on and banged up pretty badly. Total amnesia, doesn't know anything. So they're investigating. I mean, was she abducted? I don't know.
Where was she found?
20 miles away from the porch.
Oh, wow.
Still in North Carolina, but yeah. And she's all banged up. I don't know.
Maybe her lemonade was spiked.
Let's hope not. I mean, speaking of spikes, going back to the cocaine sharks. UK has a problem with cocaine eels, and there's a lot of they've been finding a lot of cocaine in the eels in the rivers around London, and it's caused a lot of problems with their mating behaviors and stuff like that. Oh, that's another thing. The cocaine sharks, they're starting to connect dots that they're looking into. It's not proven yet. There's been migratory disruptions with the sharp-nosed shark, and they're starting to wonder, coked out of their fucking minds. Maybe they're like, hey, I'll get there on time. They're kind of like forgetting about like their yearly migration or something. So they're wondering, hey, maybe it's all the cocaine that's screwing up their migratory patterns.
Maybe they have COVID and cocaine brain.
Did you see that in New Hampshire, that whale that it seems to happen once a year?
Oh, that was
breached onto a boat, capsized. Everyone's fine. And, the news everywhere is like, everyone's fine. The boat was capsized. They were rescued. I never saw one question saying, is the whale okay? I mean, a breaching whale on top of a boat? That must fuck that thing up.
Shit. Well, that's a question.
Have you ever seen a breaching whale before, Lydia?
I have not ever seen it.
Okay. And I grew up, I used to see them all the time. But I think I've said this a million times. Now that they've changed the shipping lanes in and out of New York Harbor, come September, if you hang out, you're going to see a breaching humpback off of Rockaway, which is hilarious because usually when you see these National Geographic photographs, it's like in some open ocean or some beautiful picturesque thing. Right. This is like got like shitty co-ops and low-income housing in the background as a breaching, the breaching whale, which is, I think kind of funny.
Well,
yes. I'm out of stories.
I think it's time to take a nap, actually.
Yeah, I am.
Air quality is really disruptive to one's mental, health. It's exhausting. I mean, it's been poor for I don't know how many days. Yeah, choke it out. And it's just, it doesn't matter whether you're inside or outside. First of all, indoor humidity is like 70%. I don't know how they estimate that.
Yeah. Oh, and they also they estimate dander. They're like, it's a dander alert. Like, how would they even know that? But okay.
It's a dander alert.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, I think I'm going to go vacuum my bed before I take a nap just to make sure there's no dander under my.
Yeah. No. Evidence. Yeah, I'm a little slow today with the COVID and the bad air, but by next week I should be.
We'll be
up and on fire. Exactly.
Back in the saddle very, very shortly. Well, with that in mind, that is and was the Lydia and Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl, and our guest this week will be Steve Wynn of Dream Syndicate, reading from his upcoming book and telling us all kinds of juicy details about his life in rock.
Oh, yes.
Signing out. Bye, Tim.
Bye.
This is the Lydia and Spin with Lydia Lunch, Tim Dahl, and Steve Wynn of the Dream Syndicate and many other projects. Welcome, Steve.
Hey, Lydia. Good to see you.
Been too long.
Been too long.
When was the last time you two ran into each other?
I know. You played at the Battery Electric some years ago, like maybe years are too hard to figure out, but I'm gonna say 7 or 8 years ago you played there and we hung out afterwards and talked for a long time in that back room there.
Maybe our friend Shani Ray was also there that night.
Yes, she was. She was.
Exactly. All right. Yeah. Well, you like us are I'm a hardcore road dog, and you have two things to celebrate and promote right now, which is your first solo album in 12 years and a book, a memoir.
Yes.
Yeah. If I say it, it must be true. That's the name of the book. Is that right?
I like that. Close. I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true.
I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true. And Make It Right is the name of the is the name of the LP, which is a solo LP, but you have a lot of guests on it.
Yes, I do. All kinds. Yeah, a lot of various friends and people from all around the world kind of recorded over a period of 5-6 years in, well, Spain, Norway, US, other places.
So just recording one song at a time here or there, wherever your pals were. How'd that happen?
No, what it was, and by the way, I mean, you've written many books. This is my first. I've never done this before, so this is all, in writing a book and talking about a book, is all new stuff for me, and I'm really enjoying the ride. But while I was writing it, which, as you know, takes longer than for playing a show or writing a song, takes a little bit of time. In the course of writing the book, I was also writing songs and working on, new material and collaborating with people and showing up in different places, doing what I normally do. And when the book was finished and had a scheduled release, I decided I would like to have a record to tie into the book, and realized in the course of writing the book, I'd not only written and recorded songs, but they all had been pretty much informed by and inspired by what I was writing in the book. If the book was a memoir, an autobiography of sorts, the songs were the soundtrack to that autobiography. So it really flowed together as a companion piece to the book.
Did you write for the characters that you were basically discussing or talking about in the book? Is that what inspired it? Like, I want this person to do this on this song.
Not so much that. I was writing more about, I think in the course of writing the book, which is about a very particular part of my life, well, about childhood, but also about the time in the 80s when the Dream Syndicate was around for the first time. And there's a lot of, like there are in books like this, a lot of self-examination, a lot of thinking about what happened, why it happened, what could have happened instead, what I, wish I'd done differently, what I'd steadfastly glad I didn't do differently, all those kinds of things. And all of those thoughts were coming to the songs. So they weren't so much about characters or this crusty old character I met behind a club one night. They were more about me, the crusty character that I'd become, and how that played out and how I look back on that person now. And then, and when you're writing a book like that, you're inevitably, even if you're not trying to write some type of sad sack little, psychiatrist couch kind of thing, which I didn't want to do, you're still diving into things about yourself that maybe you'd let sit, in the back of your cranium for a long time. And, that turns into songs pretty easily.
How long did it take you to write the book then? Was it you said the album was over a few year period as you went here, there, and the other. When did you decide, okay, now it's time to write the book? And also, did you have to go back and I just skimmed through it because I'm busy, just got it, and I was skimming through it, but you seem to have a pretty good memory of things that were going down and when they were going down.
Yeah, I think I have three things working in my favor. One, I do have a pretty good memory. Hey, I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true, so I guess I do. I do. Exactly. I think I really have a good memory of things and how they went down. Two, I'm a really fast typist, and that worked my favor. And three, the third thing that worked my favor is there was a pandemic, so that's what I did. Everybody did something, and like you say, I'm a road dog. I've been touring all the time, and I love that life. But I couldn't do it for a year and a half. So it was at that point I thought about writing the book. I'd written a few sample chapters, but was too busy. And I don't know about you, but I can't really write on the road, a thing like this. Some people can sit in the back seat of a van or whatever.
That's tough.
No,
I can't really. No. It's hard for me to do anything on the road. I'm just kind of like when I'm traveling from city to city, I'm just just resting and just
Tim, you're usually recovering from the night before.
Well, there you go. There's that too. Recharging. Yes. Let's put it that way.
But recharging, and also, yeah, I think you're right. I'm sorry to mean to interrupt you on that, but I think that when you're on tour, there's just so much stimulus all the time.
Right.
It just, sound and noise in literal form, in emotional form. You're just, everything's happening, and the silence is kind of nice. So you don't want to fill it with more stuff, and it's kind of hard to think and see clearly when you're in the middle of all that.
Interesting you say that, because often touring with Lydia, we have no music in the van or anything. We just little whispers and conversations and silence.
Do you listen to music or things on headphones in the van, or just nothing?
Some people do. I don't. I like to kind of clear the head. I mean, I've listened to so much music in my life, and I'm surrounded by so much music. It's okay to not listen to music.
I find it's even hard to read a book on tour often. Like, really? Just because it's just I want the, first of all, you're doing what you're absolutely born to do, and then when you're not doing it, because it takes about 20 hours to do it every day, right?
Yeah.
The silence and the absence of chores is a relief. So just yeah, I think it's a good feeling, actually.
It is, yeah. And
the absence
and so
of right.
Yeah, the absence of chores, the absence of having to do something, and just recharging, like you said, Tim, about just recharging before you have to do next. It's a Herculean feat that we all do out there, especially, dare I say, the obvious. As we get older, it gets harder in some ways, easier in other ways, because you know how to do it. You've been there.
You've done it a million times.
It's done it a million times, right? But still, it's like to toss nothing isn't easy. But when 2020 happened, I was home alone for a good chunk of it, because my wife, Linda, was up with her family in Vermont, and I was here with a lot of coffee and and an iPad and fast typing fingers, and just said, well, let's try this book. And like I said, I'd never done this before, but I had seen the advice given that you should just try to write 500 words a day, write 200 words a day, write 1,000 words a day. I figured, okay, I'll wake up in the morning, do that. And I found myself writing 3,000 or 4,000 words a day, just because yeah, it was really crazy. I would kind of just go into a binge of cranking it out, and it came together pretty quickly. And at a certain point, I stopped because touring began again. I was canary in the coal mine. I'm not sure about the two of you, but I was the second that the decks were clear to go out, I went out. I was back on tour. I think it was late summer of 2021. At that point, well, the book can wait, especially because I had no place to put it out. I wasn't writing a book for a publishing company, for anybody, for any reason besides just to say, well, now I can finally do it. Fortunately, or even a bit surprisingly, my friend Pat Thomas, he said, let me see if I can get you a publisher. And he shopped around and went to Jawbone in the UK, and they said, yeah, we'd love to do it. And at that point, I was about 2/3 done with the book. And once I knew somebody wanted to put it out, then it was kind of the case of, well, geez, not only have to finish it, but someone's going to read this thing. So it also added to the thing of going back and looking to see what I'd written, and if there's anything that I didn't want to say or wanted to say differently. So that began the editing period.
When I'm about to write a book, I mean, like you were saying about just wake up and do it, I would cut out a period of time, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. And for that period of time, every day, no matter what came out, that's what I was doing. And my cookbook and Paradoxia, 3 months to write it, because, and my little secret about writing a book, because mine is a memoir, but it's not a rock and roll memoir. It doesn't talk about the art. It talks about the deviations. Was think of it like a postcard of the images you want to fill it, like a postcard image, what they are, the most important images, fill in the back. Well, one of the details I saw that made me laugh was that George Jefferson, the Jeffersons, would come into the record store you worked at. I don't know if it was the same time you were working there with Nels Klein. Most musicians have worked at record stores.
Yes, you're right about that. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that's very actually.
He's a big prog rock guy, right? That's what I've read.
Oh my God, yes. And by the way, I worked with Nels at Rhino Records, And this was the store I worked at before that, a store called Moby Disc in the Valley, which isn't around anymore. But I was working there just before Rhino, and Sherman Helmsley, George Jefferson would come in 3 or 4 times a week, and yes, with red eyes, and instead of talking like I will not even try to do a George Jefferson invitation, but instead of what he sounds like on the TV show, he was like, "Hey man, you got that new Keith Emerson record in stock? Oh, Dave, there's a guy named Dave who was our prog buyer at the store. He said, Dave said he was going to hold it. He was going to hold it for me. I go, oh, sorry, Sherm. We don't have it in yet, but I'll let you know when it comes. Okay, well, I'm going to buy a few of those vials over there and maybe some rolling papers. And oh, that scale looks good too. I'll get that as well. So he was buying a paraphernalia and prog records.
I mean,
very nice, but very
soft machine.
Yeah.
I read it all. That I was like, what? This guy's really into prog rock. Okay.
Yeah.
He'd have them over his house, I think, when they would be on the road. A lot of these bands, like King Crimson and all that stuff.
I've heard that too.
Yeah.
I've throw really amazing parties.
Yeah. For like nerds. So
I remember he really liked PFM. That was like, wow. It wasn't just, Yes and Genesis or whatever.
Right.
This guy, he was like, you got that new PFM record? Like, wow, okay, George
he was in a magma and all that.
He was.
He went for it. Yeah.
He went for it. It was amazing. Yeah, I mean, but that was, working in record stores in LA. Yeah, working at record stores in LA was like, that would happen. All kinds of people would come into, that was just a natural thing, whether it was, the singer of the Bo Brummel, Sal Valentino, who, besides being the guy who sang those Bo Brummels in the 60s, he had by chance helped Warner Brothers to sign Ricky Lee Jones to the label, and that record really took off. Well, they didn't want to put him on staff, but to reward him, I guess, or for what he had done, they would give him tons of what they would call cleans, records by Warner Brothers artists that were unmarked, uncut, and he would show up at our back door saying, "I've got 100 clean copies of the Doobie Brothers. Can I sell them to you?" Like, sure, Sal. Sell us your illegal clean records, and we'll sell them to our customers, and no one's the wiser. That's only in Hollywood or Van Nuys, as the case would be.
Do you miss the collective music gathering consumer side of it? Just the community of that, because you don't see that anymore. I mean, people gathering to a store or and just communicating and talking about.
Well, Amoeba still exists in LA.
Yeah, but it's not the same.
Yeah, it's great. That is a cool thing. But I think it's not the same. It's funny you ask that, because in the course of writing the book, when I was writing about things like being a college DJ or writing about working at record stores, I was so excited about it. I still am. When I do interviews about this or just talk to friends, I can talk for hours about standing behind a record store counter or doing college DJing. When you start talking about being in the Dream Syndicate, as much as I'm proud of everything I've done and done since and all the touring we've all done, I kind of clam up. It's like, oh yeah, I play in a band. Yeah, we tour, we do gigs, sure. I guess maybe as much as I'm, we're all proud of that. We've gone against the odds. We've made music that matter to people and had long careers doing it and forged our own way of doing it. And that's hooray for us. But somehow when I talk about selling records for $3 an hour, I can't stop. And I think you're right. I think it is the community of it. The fact anything you do when you're 20 years old, 19 years old is going to be more mysterious and special than what you did last week.
Yeah.
Any other famous customers that would come into your store and their proclivities?
There were a bunch. I mean, a favorite one. This one didn't make the book, but Danny Sugarman, who managed the Doors, maybe you knew him. He would come in, much like the Sal Valentino story. He would come into Rhino, where I worked, regularly with just stacks of Doors records, that he was selling. And, and I don't know how he was getting them, but probably a similar type of thing of like, geez, Danny, just stop bugging us. We'll give you Doors records to sell for whatever you need money for. And one day I was the rare case of the nice record store clerk. I wasn't a sarcastic, snarky clerk, could have been, but everybody else I worked with was. And one day the guy I worked with, a guy named John Williams, when Danny Sugarman came in with a stack of Doors records, had enough and said, "Get the fuck out of here, you vulture! Get out of the store, never come back."
Whoa.
That was the end of that. Somebody had to say it.
My buddy Jason Lafarge, who's a guitarist and music engineer here in Brooklyn, but he's from Georgia, and he managed a Tower Records in Atlanta. And Elton John would come in because he lives in Atlanta a lot of the year. Would come in once a week, and he's a notorious spender, big spender. He'd buy up everything that came in, and he'd make a big grand statement about, because they would always plan like, oh, he's coming. Let's kind of like play something weird in the background, see what he says. Sometimes he'd love it, and sometimes he'd be like absolute rubbish, and there'd be a huge prep. All his yes men and assistants are coming like, she's in a bad mood today, and like everyone's like kind of bad mood clearing the path for Elton John to come in. But anyhow, that's
great. I've heard that about it. I heard once somebody say that he would buy everything he bought. He would buy 3 copies, one for his home in LA, one for the home in Atlanta, and one for the home in London or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Amazing. Incredible.
That guy.
I mean, I have one favorite. I even hate to say it, Elton John song, and that's "Leave On," because I don't know any other top 40 song that says, and the New York Times says "God is dead and the war's begun," and it's a top 40 song. So "Leave On" is kind of my favorite Elton John song.
Did either of you ever see Elton John like as kids or something? Like you're growing up? No. I mean, sometimes people just get stumbled into tickets. I don't know. You did.
I did. I saw him when I was like 11, 12 years old at a couple times, opening for Leon Russell at the Anaheim Convention Center, and then doing his own show at the Forum. That was a kid, and Lydia, unlike you, I will stand by liking a lot of his stuff. I think he's I think Madman Across the Water is a good record, and he did a lot of good stuff. He's no problem. No problem with Elton John. I'm fine with him.
So, Steve,
you're a singer-songwriter, and even at 9, you were writing songs. I think you said you wrote your first song at 9, and also, I mean, how weird was it that basically your first full album on Ruby Records, which we both were on at the time. Thank you, Christy / Records.
Thank you, Christy. Yes.
They put out 1313, and what a great label that was. Your first album just did so well. People loved it. Was that weird, or you're like, yeah, that's right, you should? How did you deal with that?
It was, that's right, we should, definitely. I don't know how you felt about those things with Queen of Siam and things like that when records over the years, but early on, especially when you're starting out, at least in our case, we knew we were good. It wasn't false bravado. It wasn't a case of whatever was the Beatles thing, they say toppermost to the poppermost. It wasn't a pep talk thing. We knew we were damn good. Over the years, there were pitfalls and things where we did the wrong thing and listened to the wrong people. But the first year of the Dream Syndicate, I would say we were, unassailable. We were
it holds up, and people really loved it. And what's also interesting is at that point, because it's just LA 82, we'll say 79 to 82, when there was a lot of harsher punk rock happening, but you maybe having a smoother record, but you were still antagonistic in your live shows. Sometimes you be there to piss the audience off. Like, we're just going to play this feedback for 3 minutes. Too bad.
3.
5, 10.
Oh, yeah. I mean, did you ever see us back then, Lydia? I know I met you back in those days.
No, I don't think I didn't. I never saw you back in the early antagonistic days.
Mm-hmm. I do remember the night I met you, and that's a story that didn't make the book, but it's a good story.
Do tell.
Do you remember?
Refresh me.
Involved Marcy and Marcy Blaustein, and I think it was the party she'd thrown, and I just mentioned I was a big fan of yours. And you materialized like about 10 minutes later. It was magic.
Trust the witch.
maybe you said, come by, whatever, you came by. And I was so excited to meet you because I was and am a big fan. And at that point, there are a handful of records I played. Well, many records I played to death because that was what I do. And Queen of Siam was one of them. And I said, let's go for a ride. I remember, and I think
I remember the ride. Oh, do tell.
And I'm glad we're both alive because I was very, very drunk and got drunker. And I was nervous. I was not a meet your heroes kind of person, and kind of a shy, despite being thrown into this circle, into this world where people suddenly were coming to see us play. I was very shy. So like, well, let's go for a ride. And we got into my Honda Civic and drove the length of Mulholland Boulevard. We were
Yes, I do remember that.
to the ocean,
Yeah.
drunk as hell. I think you kind of were, I don't know, either like, God, get me away from this lunatic or whatever, but it was fun. We listened to music.
Drive over the cliff right now. Either way, yeah.
With the fact we're both alive is a good thing.
I do remember the drive, but I didn't realize that was also the same night we met. So, all right.
Yeah, that was the first night we met. But that was that was divergence from something. I forgot. Oh yeah, but going back to Christie, I'm eternally
of the
grateful.
Flesh Eaters, one of my favorite bands of all times.
A Flesh Eater, Divine Horseman, and at that time, the guy who was Ruby Records and was given the Slash gave him carte blanche to put out the bands he liked and produce them. And he did your record, did ours, Gun Club, a bunch of records. I give so much credit to him for putting us into the studio and letting us be us. At that point, like I said earlier, we knew what we did was really at that time unique. It was very cool. It was what didn't exist on the scene, and we were doing it with complete cockiness and arrogance and just enough antagonism. But it would have been easy to go into the studio for the first time, have somebody say, well, things are different now, kids. You gotta work this way, and here's how we do it now. Welcome to the real world. Chris just said, yeah, go out there and do your thing. I'll sit here, do what you do. And it was, I'm not sure, did you do your record at Quad Tech in Hollywood?
I don't know, because 1313 had to be recorded twice. We recorded the whole album twice for some reason, but we got it right the second time. And I can't remember where it was first recorded. And maybe the band members changed, but that's just one of my favorite records as well. Dick Stenny, Cliff Martinez.
Steve, did you ever record a record twice? Did you ever like, this isn't happening, and you went back and did it again?
No, but I did spend 5 months recording our second album, and that felt like more than twice.
Okay.
I have never spent that long doing anything, but except for continuing what I'm doing. But I'm sure it was recorded in 2 or maybe maximum 3 days. Anyway, why don't you read us something from your new book, On Job?
Sure. By the way, I've never done this before. Believe it or not, you do this. You've been doing this for decades. You do this so well. I've never. And I'm glad to do this because I plan to go on tour doing a little bit of reading and music, so I better get used to it. So
pop in your cherry once again.
Here I once again.
Pop my Mulholland Drive cherry.
Yeah, that was
my near-death cherry.
That was quite a cherry. So this I chose as a passage something from around the time I met you. I figured that'd be kind of tie it all together. So not even knowing how long it takes to read a page, I learned that because of this show. I timed this. I think this is about 3 minutes. So this is 1983, around the time the band, just after we recorded Days of Wine and Roses. It's just come out. I was now within walking distance of the Roxy, the Whiskey A Go-Go, and Starwood, as well as plenty of taco stands, donut shops, and liquor stores. Spock, who I introduced earlier as Joanna Spock Dean, Spock had been in the pioneering LA all-female punk group Backstage Pass and knew plenty of people in the local music world. Our pad became kind of a rock and roll hangout for musicians, music biz people, and scenesters who dropped by on the way to or from the clubs. Living there made it easier to see shows and meet people in a world that had previously been distant and alien to me. I was gradually becoming less of an outsider looking in. In early 1983, we were asked to perform at Club Lingerie for a show called Hot Spots on the USA TV network. This meant national exposure, the chance to reach more potential fans across the country. Unfortunately, a few days before the gig, I started having some serious tooth discomfort in my back molars. And it got worse and worse until I finally woke up in blinding pain on the morning of the taping. I rushed over to my dentist, who told me the problem was my wisdom teeth, and all four would need to be pulled. He offered to do it right then and there. I was faced with a horrible choice. The pain was so bad, I could barely imagine getting on stage and playing a show. But on the other hand, pulling 4 wisdom teeth was a ridiculously serious procedure to undertake with soundcheck only a few hours away. Yank 'em, I said. Sedated from Demerol and filled with a prescription of codeine at the ready, I was feeling no pain and ready to play. I managed to make it through soundcheck and the show by chasing the Demerol and codeine with a few shots of whiskey. We played a brand new song called Still Holding On to You, along with Tell Me When It's Over. If you watch the clip on YouTube, you can see that my cheeks are swollen like a chipmunk and my eyes are glazed. Dennis, being Dennis Duck, our drummer, handles almost all the accompanying interview, but the performance itself is actually quite solid. In those days, I had the supernatural ability to be 5 steps beyond blotto and still remember the chords and words to my song on a blessing and a curse, since it only encouraged me to test that skill on a regular basis. Am I at the limit of my time?
No.
Okay, I'll go a little further. Our growing audience in press and radio play led us to gigs we had no business playing. One day we got a call from the Palace Theater on Hollywood and Vine because Tony Basil, riding high on the charts with Mickey, had canceled her show that evening. They wanted to know if we could fill in on just a few hours' notice. We'd get $500, which was a king's ransom to us at the time, the most any band I'd ever played with had ever been paid to play a set of music. We showed up at soundcheck, and the club manager got upset because they had a dress code that didn't allow for Carl's torn blue jeans. Every fiber of our being said to tell them to go fuck themselves, but we wanted the money. We went home to change our clothes and at the same time get extremely drunk. On returning, naturally, there was almost nobody in the audience since everybody had asked for a refund due to the non-Mickey show. We were in serious don't give a fuck mode and opened with a serviceable rendition of the song Carl had recently written called Halloween. And then I started vamping on Big Brother and the Holding Company's Piece of My Heart, not bothering to change the gender and camping up the lyrics. The house manager was not amused and dropped the curtain on us mid-song. We still got paid, but we were riled up and ready for a confrontation. Rather than take it out on the club, they kicked us out soon after giving us our money. I put my fist through a glass cabinet once I got home. I still have the scar.
That's from Steve Wynn's new book, The Trials and Tribulations of a Forever Road Dog. That's just the subtitle I'm giving to it now.
I like it.
That period in LA, the Roxy, the whiskey. What about Rodney Bingenheimer's? Did you go there, or was that a little before your time?
No, that was in our time. Well, I think still our time. He keeps going. It's beyond belief. What were some of the best shows you saw there? Because I mean, they would have pretty big acts playing at the Roxy and the Whiskey. Yeah, and the Starwood too, which was
the Starwood
also great. And that was on our corner. All that, so many great shows. God, now I mean, I saw, really early X shows, of course. And
Goosebumps, early X Goosebumps. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, incredible. And although one show that really stands out of all those that I saw was a show at the Whiskey where there were about 20 people, and it was the Blasters and Gun Club. And, they were both just starting out. This is maybe even before the Blasters record. It is before the Blasters made the record for Slash. They just an independent record, and Gun Club had maybe not even done Fire of Love. And it was mind-blowing because Jeff Lee Pierce was out of control, came on stage with some giant chain. I mean, I'm not a bicycle chain, but giant chain, and just slammed on the stage throughout the whole show. And it was this is equally horrifying, comical, and I don't know what to think, but that was a great one. So I'd put that one high up there. But the early X shows, Carl and I seeing Motley Crue, a band who was just starting out on a whim, saying, thinking like, we've been hearing about this new scary heavy metal band called Motley Crue, and we went to go see them and said, "Oh my God, that's the wimpiest thing we've ever seen." Just shocked by that. That was amazing. And then one really important one in my life, this is in the book, really key to my life, was around, I don't know, maybe early '81. The Feelies came through town, and I was a big fan of them. They played at the Whiskey, and I ended up getting sick that morning and I had 103-degree fever, but I was no way I was going to miss the Feelies' first show in LA. So I went there, and the opening band was a band called Human Hands. And that was the first time I laid eyes on Dennis Duck, who became and still is my drummer 40 years later. He's not my drummer. I'm his singer.
Oh, okay. I mean, the idea of being frightened at a show. I mean, that's been a while for me, but there's a few shows I can remember, like, what's going to happen next, and what is this, and does the performer even know what's really going to happen next? And
yeah,
I kind of miss those. I don't, or maybe it's just the novelty of such a thing.
You're so used to being on tour with me, Tim.
Well, there you go. There you go. I mean,
I was
I
gonna
was
say,
at,
what shows made you feel that when you were young? What shows just kind of blew your mind?
I would say, well, I saw some like Florida death metal shows that were a little interesting when I was like 16, like Deicide, Morbid Angel. That was this kind of real satanic kind of thing, but actually more frightening. Because that wasn't really frightening. That was just like a ghost story or something. Um, live houses in Tokyo, like noise shows, like 20 years ago, and Broken Bones, like performers really taking it as far out, and self mutilation, and whoa, we don't know what's really going to happen.
I don't know why, but it just reminded me that for some reason, I don't know how I came upon this yesterday. Guar covering "I'm Just Ken" as "I'm Just Guar."
Oh no!
And it was pretty outlandish. I'm not that Guar was ever.
Well, we played a festival last summer in Spain. Guar, you weren't there, you didn't see them, but Guar did play in that same festival, and I don't think there's any original members.
You could tell with those costumes.
Well, you couldn't tell, but that's what I heard. And it was like 15 of them. It was even more absurd. It was just like the Muppets or something. It was
or like Menudo.
Right. Well, exactly. Right.
I would say early Butthole Surfers. Not that they were terrifying, but they were unpredictable. I mean, and they were pretty outrageous. That was some pretty good stuff. Fire, nudity, whatever else they managed to throw on the stage.
Yeah, I never saw them. I can't believe I never saw them. We know. I mean, I was seeing a lot of the early replacement shows, and they were also like that, although more maddening than frightening, which is kind of like, the kind of band you would see one day and say, this is the best band I've ever seen in my life, and then see them a week later and say, oh my God, I can't even stay for another song because they're just destroying themselves song by song. But that's exciting.
Weird. If I see old YouTubes of old replacement shows and where they're really going for it, I'm like, because I never saw them live, and then I'm like, the records I've heard, because I haven't heard all the records, I'm like, this doesn't seem to represent what I'm seeing on stage. Was that the case, or were there records that really captured the mania of when they were kind of really killing it?
Man, they were incredible early on, and I'm talking probably 82, 83,
right,
when they had this first few records out, and they were when they were on, they were just so exciting, and I think those early records kind of the please not, I mean, with Hootenanny and Take Out the Trash Man, those records kind of are what they were like on a good night back then.
Yep.
But we were similar too. Like we would drive people crazy. I mean, there's one story, we'd played the Rat in Boston. This is right after Days of Wine and Roses came out, and we played a show at the Rat. It was sold out, jam packed. We were conquering here. People went bonkers. We were at the top of our game. This original lineup, everything, all that. And the next night, we've been booked to play in New Haven at Toad's Place. Dig this, as to go on after the last episode of MASH. They were going to show the last episode of MASH on the big screen at 8:00 or whatever.
Oh my God.
And we'd play at 11. So we get there, and the place is sold out. And that's a pretty big room, like 500-600 people there. And we're backstage, all right. We're watching MASH like everybody else, whatever, and having a few drinks. MASH ends, and the place empties out. I mean, it's down. All of a sudden, it goes from 600 people to about 15. So we sit backstage and say, okay, what do you want to do with this show? And we're not going to play our set. And we played, 20-minute version of Pablo Picasso and a 20-minute version of a Santana song. And just said, we're just going to completely just, play one of our songs and a bunch of just jam for a long time. We thought that was the funniest thing to do. Well, years later, I found out that a guy who now plays with me often, a guy kind of Kirk Swan, who was in Dump Truck, has played in my solo band at various times, been in a bunch of different bands, great guitarist from Boston. He had seen that show at the Rat, and he said, this band is really just changed my life. And he calls up 3 of his friends and said, trust me, get in my car tomorrow. We're driving to New Haven. You got to see this band. We're going to drive 2 hours and go down to New Haven, and you're not going to believe what you're going to see. You're going to thank me for this. And they pull in, and there we are, just jamming for an hour drunkenly and playing Modern Lovers and Santana covers. And he thought, I hate these guys so much. We've made up since then, but he was so angry. That just goes to show you, the thing you think is transcendent and cool and groundbreaking is somebody else's nightmare.
Yeah.
You know who had really awful early shows, probably when they were driving in a station wagon, but especially compared to their albums because they were, the best ones produced by Bob Ezrin, was Alice Cooper's live shows early were so atrocious. They were just so bad. It was just nothing. But then when they were on the Midnight Special or Don Kirshner's rock concert, then somehow they had got with the program and were what they lived up to for that short period of time when they were doing great records until Billion Dollar Babies.
So what you were seeing, like really early stuff, like Easy Action and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, live stuff like that. It was just, and when they were first just bringing out all the corny crap, but it was pretty bad stuff.
Well, we had a friend of mine plays for the Meat Puppets now. And we had, who do we have on from the Meat Puppets on the podcast? Oh, what's his name? Oh my God,
it's on 265
yeah,
podcasts.
it's terrible. Because Meat Puppets would have notorious, like, insane shows, but when they signed to a major label, basically the execs were like, sent the producer like, we're going to tone this down, and it actually ended up benefiting them financially. But it was kind of like, if you're a kid, you knew nothing about them and you bought it,
right?
And then you go to see them live, you're like, huh? Of course, some like me, I'd be like, yeah. But whatever.
Well, that's one of the sad things about the '80s that was just a weird anomaly, kind of almost unlike decades before and since. In the '80s, you would do whatever it was that got you kind of on people's radar, and labels would immediately put you in a studio to clean you up. And it was kind of that era, of the producer, and like, well, this is how we don't make records by just replicating what you do. We create something with the technology we have. And a lot of bands who were incredible early on never got to show what they did.
Yeah.
I would name a few, but it'd be like ragging on people, and that's unfair to do.
Sure.
But they're definitely bands. And actually, Meat Puppets, who I saw, I guess around the time the first album came out, they were the fastest, loudest punk rock band of all. Do you know a band called Monitor? That was around. They were an art rock band in LA, around kind of contemporary of Human Has, Wall of Voodoo, a band called Bee People. They called the Pasadena art mafia scene. They call it, I think.
Okay.
All these kind of arty Pasadena bands, kind of in the tail end of punk. It was all documented on a compilation called Darker Scratcher, really great. It's become kind of legendary. 45 Grave was peripheral to that.
Yep.
And all kind of part of the same scene. Anyway, Monitor was a sort of spacey, trippy, something between crowd rock and Velvet Underground kind of band that would rarely play shows. They'd play, I think only on holidays, like the Feelies did. Anyway, they put out their debut album the first album they made, great album that's hard to find now. And one of their songs they had played by the Meat Puppets. They said, okay, there.
Okay.
And then, so you're listening to this very trippy record, and all of a sudden there's this minute and a half complete land speed record kind of punk rock song. And that was them playing on somebody else's record, which I thought was great. I can't think of many cases where that's existed, where a band's done a record and just invited some complete other band to play a song in the midst of the record. It was fantastic.
Yeah. Cool.
Great concept.
So,
it is.
Going back to MASH, did you know this fun fact that when it was shown in Europe and England, there was no laugh track? It was so saturated with laugh tracks in America, but in England, there was no laugh track. So it was way darker. It wasn't like this kind of force-fed bullshit. It was kind of like, huh?
A lot of the laugh tracks on comedy show, I can't stand laugh tracks, were recorded like decades ago. They're horrible. I hate a fucking laugh track. I'd like a crying track.
Crying track would be great.
Well, did you like Lydia? Did you like the laugh tracks in the beginning of Natural Born Killers when Roddy Dangerfield plays the dad?
That's a different thing. That's just a piss take on everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, Steve, when is your book out? Is it out the end of August?
It is.
Pre-orders now?
Both the book and the record around August 30th. And pre-orders,
on Amazon, I see it now. I wouldn't say
it. Amazon, Fire Records, Jawbone.
Jawbone has a lot of, music-related rock books. It's a good label.
It really is. I'm
very interesting stuff.
Much like being on Slash when Ruby, when we all started, I'm kind of flattered that I'm getting my first book on such a great imprint.
Cool. Yeah. Well, why don't you give us another taste of your soon to be released?
I didn't know I had
say it.
I didn't know I had,
if it
I didn't know I had
wasn't
that.
true.
I can do this though. Because I didn't know there would be.
See, this is like
I didn't know that.
This is like your first practice session, and
Okay, here we
that's
go.
pretty much you've mastered it.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to talk about Making the Days of Wine and Roses because was
We'll
we're
put you
talking
on the
about
map.
that. Yeah, exactly. Um, let's see. I'm gonna. This is a shorter one, but um, I talk about we'd done a radio show for KPFK just before Making Days of Wine and Roses, about 3 weeks before, to kind of, I don't know, warm up, do our thing, and it was a pretty raucous show that actually eventually got released on its own as a record called The Day Before Wine and Roses.
Hmm.
So I'm talking about that and saying the confidence and excitement of playing live on the air, along with the 6-pack of Mickey's Big Mouth I purchased at a gas station across the street, resulted in the best show we'd ever played up to that point. We focused on the twin elements of our careening punk rock side, influenced by recent records by Black Flag and the Circle Jerks, balanced by our extended sprawling hippie jam side, with the two elements coming together at the same time on a cathartic, anarchic take on Donovan's Season of the Witch. I've been fooling around the little 5-note riff reminiscent of television's early single, Little Johnny Jewel. We decided we would take a chance at our biggest show on live radio and play a song that would begin with that particular riff with no musical or lyrical roadmap beyond that, and just play it for as long as we wanted. Our friend, the writer Byron Coley, suggested we call it Open Hour. That title stuck until it was changed to John Coltrane's Stereo Blues when we were making Medicine Show the following year. That show set us up well for making the album, filling us with confidence and fearlessness. On the other hand, I do remember the sensation once we were in the studio of being near the final minute of what I knew was a good take of the song, thinking and praying, oh man, please don't make a mistake, or play a wrong chord, or drop a pick, or fuck this up. I'd never had that feeling in the studio since, but I knew we were walking on clouds, and I was afraid of looking down, or waking up from the dream of letting the band or our mission down in any way. Chris D was the perfect producer for our session, and his style was one I've tried to emulate when I produced records in the years since. He approached the session as a fan, as a listener, as the conscience that we needed so that we could barrel through, take down the guardrails, not worry about a thing, be ourselves and let it fly. He did the worrying as well as the time and take management for us while slowly making his way through a liter bottle of Smirnoff vodka. The house engineer and studio manager, Pat Burnett, the son and nephew, respectively, of the great Johnny and Dorsey Burnett of the Rock and Roll Trio, easily kept up with the pace of the evening. I think we got most of the songs in a single take. A lot of our sound in those early days came down to the Mutt and Jeff mix of my large, loud twin reverb with Carl's tiny Champ amplifier. I would get maximum clang and jangle from my rhythm, while Carl skulked about with shards of noise and chaos that sat within the overall sound, instead of standing out in 3D above the fray. It's not the typical lead guitar, rhythm guitar approach, but rather one big amorphous mess that worked for us and would be also ill-advisedly abandoned when we made our next record. We successfully captured all 9 songs in that first late night session, wandering out tired, contented at 8 a.m., our eyes blinking off the harsh morning LA sunlight. The following night was spent on vocals, some minimal overdubs, our harmonica until lately, a foghorn-like sliding note on the solo of Tell Me When It's Over that I had borrowed from a section I'd always liked in the middle of Ramble Tamble by Creedence Clearwater Revival. Otherwise, all the instrumental parts, including solos, were done live that first evening of tracking. On the third night, we mixed the entire album in 8 hours, a fast pace. Most mixing sessions I've had since would tackle 2, maybe 3 songs a day. Never as many as the 9 songs we finished that night that ended up on the album. On that last morning, I left the studio at 8 a.m. and got in my car with a cassette of the mixes sequenced in the order they would appear on the album. I drove across town to Westwood, where I opened the Rhino store to start my shift and cranked the tape at top volume on the store stereo system, reveling in the certainty that we had made a record that reflected the music we loved and what went down at our best live shows. I remember thinking, well, if I never make another record again, at least I'll know I made one really good one.
That's Steve Wynn of the Dream Syndicate and many other solo projects from his new book, which will be out at August 30th on Jawbone, called I Wouldn't Say It If It Wasn't True, a Memoir of Life. I want to say life, love, and money, but that is a Johnny Winter song. A Memoir of
Sure, why
Life,
not?
Music, and the Dream Syndicate.
That's a
Love,
wrong
laugh, and money.
wrong Steve Wynn. Do you address that in the book, that he's sharing the name with the Vegas realtor and casino developer?
I most certainly do not, and I think he's a pretender to the throne because he's got his name with a PH for one, so he has no right to my V for one thing.
Fair.
Two, I'm very grateful for a enduring career in Europe because over there people don't know who he is, and I'm thankful for that because
Good
my
answer.
God.
Good
and
answer.
on top of that, he's a real asshole and
Totally,
couldn't be more of a polar opposite from things I believe in. So yeah, the less said about him, the better.
Yes,
Well,
you're the one with the V.
Exactly.
That's my V, damn it.
Take the V.
V's a cooler letter than PH together, I think.
Your new solo record with many guests that will also be out around the same time called Make It Right, ready for pre-order. Steve Wynn, old time buddy, Mulholland Drive. We'll have to do it again sometime. Maybe we'll go on the Verrazano Bridge. We're both
I would love that this time with a Red Bull or two instead of a fifth of whiskey. I think
that might be
we'll count our blessings.
Very good idea. Well, congratulations on your latest accomplishments. Good luck with your upcoming tours. People can check them out. And thanks so much for being on the show.
When are you in New York?
Well, I do live in New York.
Okay. So you're living in New York.
I live in Jackson Heights. Are you in Brooklyn? Is that what you said?
We're both in Brooklyn.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Lydia, I never know if you're in Pittsburgh or Barcelona or where you are in any given time.
I'm everywhere all at once, honey. I like to spread it thick.
Well, hello across the BQE. I'm in Jackson Heights, and I am playing New York at the City Winery on October 8th.
Fantastic.
I'll be in town. Maybe I'll check it out.
In town. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. We will. Okay.
I like that.
Me too. This has been the Lydia and Spin with Tim Dahl, Steve Wynn. Thank you so much, my friend.